guest tonight on the Small Market Podcast is Dr. Billy Taylor, former All-American running back for the University of Michigan. How are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm hanging in there, man. It's nice to be with you. I'm rarely under the weather, but I have been for the past few days. Something they call RSV, taking, meds and lots of fluids and lots of chicken soup. But I'll be all right. If I don't have to deal with anything worse than this, I'm doing great.
Yeah, I hear you. So, starting right off the bat, I was originally going to ask you kind of what your childhood was like growing up and stuff, but I kind of wanted to get right to the meat and potatoes of things. Your career at Michigan is probably what a lot of people within the state of Michigan know you for.
Right.
Record holder, All-American, Big Ten champion. What made you choose Michigan over schools like Ohio State and other places like that? Like, where did that begin? Did that begin at home? Did you watch a lot of Michigan? Where did that come from?
Well, the ultimate decision came with Bump Elliott, Ron Johnson, the Big House, and finally the most dominant reason is my mother. She really liked Bump Elliott, and I was recruited by Woody Hayes very aggressively. Barberton, Ohio is about 120 miles from Columbus. So, but visiting many schools, I had like 57 full scholarship offers all across the country, all the Big Ten schools, Pac-8, Harvard, Yale, and all of that. But when I went to Michigan and I walked into the Big House, it was about 20,000 seats smaller than it is today, but still it was over 100,000 feet. And the legendary Ron Johnson, he's deceased, God bless him, recruited me. Bump Elliott was the head coach. And Bump was a total gentleman, really liked him. And I always tell coaches, when you're recruiting a young man or a student athlete, whether it's male or female, you should target the mother, especially with boys. But I'll share an incident. Woody came to the house once, and he had invited me down for a couple of games. I was actually in the locker room at halftime with Woody when I was a high school senior. And I heard, how he speaks with the team. Very motivational, very inspirational, just like Bo. In fact, Bo learned from him, I'm sure. But he came to the house, and we were sitting talking in the living room in Barberton, and he was sitting across from me, and my mother was sitting off to the right. But he was talking about practice and how that goes and life on campus. And then he came back to, Billy, you should have been with me today. I had practice, and then I drove down to see you. It was only an hour and a half. And he said, you should have been there. It was a hell of a practice. And when he said that, I looked across the room. My mother's glasses were on the tip of her nose, and she just shook her head to, I grew up, in church, lots of praying going on, but I knew when he said hell of a practice that I would not be going to Ohio State. He couldn't see my mother shaking her head. But, not that he was not a gentleman, but my mom didn't like that. Plus, she had already had an impression of Bump Elliott, and so did I. And I was actually leaning towards Michigan. Because both teams, in the late 60s and 70s were great teams. But we were looking at academics as well as athletics. And Michigan scored above Ohio State. I know a lot of Buckeyes probably don't like that, but it was true. We had read it was like similar to Ivy League status academically. And then you looked at how competitive Michigan has been and was, even at that time, athletically. And so looking at academics and athletics, and then just the atmosphere in Ann Arbor and Bump Elliott, and, that closed the deal for me, and I had traveled. I mean, I got tired of traveling. I had so many offers, and I was overwhelmed with it, in a positive way, that so many teams wanted me, because that's the only way we could afford for me to go to college is through an athletic scholarship. Things were humble, growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But I picked Michigan. I certainly have no regrets. It was one of the greatest times, greatest periods in my life, and certainly in athletics.
Now, can you refresh me on the timeline, if you would, please? Bump's the head coach. He recruits you. At what point does Bo come in the picture, or is that after your tenure there?
Well, Bo, at the same time, I did leave that out. Bo was recruiting me very aggressively as well. He was the head coach at Miami of Ohio. People may recall.
Yep.
And so I visited there. And man, what a terrible time I had.
Tell us about that.
Myself and Tom Darden, one of my roommates and teammates, he's out of Sandusky. We became roommates at Michigan once we made that decision. But we were down in Miami of Ohio for recruiting, and we got there, and Bo, Coach Hanlon, I believe, was, and Coach Moeller, because Bo brought his whole staff to Michigan. They picked us up at the airport, and it started out like a typical recruitment weekend. Went to campus. We went out to dinner, and he introduced us to other coaches and other players, and it was fine. And later that night, we went out to dinner. But later that night, there was a party going on, and so some of the players that were assigned to us took us out, and it was an eye opener. It was a college campus party. We're still in high school, and we had a lot of fun. But we got in late, and at that time, 11, 12 o'clock was late for me, and so we got to sleep, and about 5 o'clock in the morning, we had boom, boom, boom on the door. And I went and opened the door, and there stood Bo. He had his baseball, his Michigan. He had his hat turned backwards. And he said, "You guys ready to work out?" And I looked around at Tom Darden. He shrugged his shoulders. I looked at Bo, and before I could say anything, he says, "Downstairs in 15 minutes, tennis shoes, shorts, and shirt." So, and he walked away. And so we were like, what? It was just barely daylight. So we went downstairs. He had us lifting weights. He had us doing push-ups, sit-ups, had somebody charting it. He had us run the 40 and 100-yard dash. And then we had to play a full-court basketball game with the team. And while this was going on, he would walk up to you, stare you in the face, and squeeze your arm. You're soft, and all of that. How'd you run all those touches? And so we kept looking at each other, and when we had a chance, we said, "There's no way in the heck we're gonna go to school here and play for this man." And said, "He's nuts. He's crazy. He's out of his mind." So we couldn't wait for that weekend to be over. And that sold the deal. We went back to Michigan, went back home, and then when we were recruited, other weekends traveling around, whether Tom and I were together or independently, I would tell people, whatever you do, don't go to Michigan. Don't go to Michigan. Don't go to Miami. Sorry, of Ohio, because you got a nut down there. You got a crazy man as a head coach. So. Then Bo would call periodically. My mom would answer the phone. She couldn't pronounce his name properly. The Bo Shimmy Shimmers, something. I was like, who? She says, he says he's from Miami. I said, tell him I'm not here. I don't want to talk to him, So several times, I think he had Coach Hanlon call, but I never took another phone call from him. And of course, we decided we were going to go to Michigan and be roommates, and that's what happened. But we got to Michigan, and we were going through the winter conditioning, and Bo came. We came home for Christmas. That's how it goes. Trying to get all of this straight in the right timeline. We came to Michigan, went through a semester. I think we were on tri-semesters then, but we came home for Christmas. It was Christmas Eve of 1968, my senior year, my freshman year at Michigan. And the headlines, I woke up in the morning, we would always, growing up, I would always read the Sunday paper and really go right to the comic section, But the headlines had Bo Schembechler named head coach, University of Michigan. I almost died, man. I couldn't believe it, And I thought somehow somebody was playing a joke. And I called Tom Darden. He said, BT, no, it's true. Bo's going to be our head coach. I was like, dang. I mean, I probably said something else other than dang. I'm like, what are we going to do now? Because both of us, we had the same feeling that he was crazy, out of his mind, and we didn't want to play for him. So Tom said it's true, and so went back to campus. We really thought about transferring, not even reporting back to school, but of course we did. And Bo just watched us in conditioning, winter conditioning, and it's nothing like it is today with the great facility for training at Michigan. We were, I think it was Waterman's Gym. We just had like one or two of those universal gyms, those things with about 4 stations. We lined up and we moved from one station to the other. And Bo would walk up close by and just stare, when I'm doing my thing. And he did some of it with Tom Darden, but mostly he was focused on me. And so made me kind of nervous, quite nervous, to be honest. And this went on for 2 or 3 days. And I set the weight down about the 3rd day of conditioning, and he stood right in my face, almost nose to nose. Taylor, I want to see you after conditioning. And I thought I was going to be kicked off the team. And because we had been talking about it like really bad. I mean, we told everybody, that he was just a nut. Do not come to Michigan. And so I went over to the locker room. Tom said, BT, he's probably going to want to talk to me too. I think we're going to be kicked off the team. So I walked over, and Lynn, his secretary, said, Bo, Bill Taylor is here to see you. Tell him to come in, real grumpy. And so I stepped in the door, closed the door. I just stood there, and I mean, I was like sweating bullets, man. So have a seat, and he started writing something. He was sitting at the desk that had a seat right in front of him. And I was like, those are probably my papers. I'm going home. But he looked up, he sat up and looked at me. And then he put his head down and continued to write something. And I was like, this is it. I'm thinking, like, what am I going to tell my mother? And so he finally sat back after about 3 or 4 minutes, but it seemed like 10 minutes or more. I'm just sitting there, and he's writing. And so he leaned back and put both hands behind his head. He says, you thought you got rid of me, didn't you? And I was like shocked. I was like, I didn't know what to say. So first thing came out of my mouth was, "No, Bo, not at all." He says, "Yes, you did. You thought you was gonna get rid of me," and I was like, "No, not at all." He said, "Well, I want to tell you something. I'm going to be harder on you than I am the rest of the guys." And I was like to myself, "Here we go." I mean, why is he signaling me out what I already thought I knew? And I'm puzzled. I didn't know what to say. I was speechless. So he said, "Do you know why?" And I just said, "No, Coach, I don't." He said, "Well, we're both from Barberton, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm showing favorites." So I had a sigh of relief, and I put a big smile on my face, although I was thinking, like, if he's going to be harder than what he's already been, I'm going to die, But I said, "Yeah, that's right, Coach. We're both from Barberton, and we're going to show him how to play football up here at the University of Michigan." So that was my introduction to him on campus after 2 or 3 days of being stared down in workouts. And I just thought for sure I was going to go home, and he kept his word. He pushed me. He pushed me. He pushed me. And what a lot of people don't know is that during that spring, the following year, we had freshman football. We only played 3 games: Bowling Green, Toledo, and well, was it just 2 games? Bowling Green and Toledo, and we were like dummies for the varsity because they had something called a Swamp Bowl or the Mud Bowl or something like that, where during practice, during the varsity practice, and we were practicing at the other field, he would bring the freshman offense to play against Michigan's first team defense, and I was on the offense, and I felt like Astro Boy. They were just jacking us up. We were running the other team plays, and but we gave them what we had, the best we could do, but we got through that, and it was just it was just really, really tough. And we went home. We went home for Christmas break. That's what it was. Fast forwarding here, and I'm getting a sequence out of sequence.
That's okay. That's all right.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Bo, I remember I left campus. Yeah, I left campus during spring ball the following year because Bo had made some negative comments to the press about my performance, and I was practicing. I was sick. I had like a strep throat, and I was just fed up with him. And I was going to go to Kent State, where my old high school coach had went, and so I actually drove home, packed my stuff, and drove home. Coaches kept calling, and I decided and talked with my mother that I would go back. And so that could have been very tragic because going to Michigan was one of the greatest decisions that I ever made. But getting into the season, he kept pushing us, and we were winning, I know he had a sign over the door in the spring, my sophomore year, that after practice we were losing so many upperclassmen. He had this sign saying, "Those who stay will be champions." And I remember saying to one teammate, or leave and become doctors and lawyers. And somebody else said we would, everybody would make up something about that period of time. But by mid-season, we were really rolling over people, and the toughness that he showed, the way he pushed us, it made us realize we were really a really good team. But the short story is, by mid-season, everybody got with the program and just loved Bo. And we continued just running over people. I remember one of our reunions that year. I don't think our opponents for the whole season in '69 scored 100 points. I think it was more like 70 something, for the whole season. So we were playing great football, and we were beating people 50, 60 to 6 and 50 to nothing and all of that stuff. So,
yeah. Now, Dr. Taylor, one of the guys I kind of go back to and think about a lot is Tom Harmon from Michigan, and you broke one of his records. Was it his season record?
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually got to meet Tom Harmon once. We were out for our first Rose Bowl, the '70 Rose Bowl, and his son, the actor, he was a student at either Southern Cal.
Yeah.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, Mark Harmon, right?
Mark, yeah.
Yep.
He came after practice and picked me up, said his dad wanted to meet me. I'm fast forwarding, that was after I broke his record my senior year. So I got to meet him, but those days everybody didn't have cell phones. You know what I'm saying? I never had a chance to take a picture with him.
Yeah.
But it was an honor, and he congratulated me, and I never forgot that because during that time everybody was talking about Tom Harmon, but as time passes, you get older, names tend to fade, but the legendary Tom Harmon, it was a big honor.
Right. People tend to forget names like that. But I was going to say, that was one of the bigger records you broke. Is there something else that, like, any other higher accolades that you hold in higher esteem than that one?
Well, that was a great record to break, and I think I had the highest average yards per carry at that time.
That's right.
71. Yeah, 5 point something yards per carry. But, the greatest individual moment was me scoring the winning touchdown and my teammates to beat Ohio State
That's
in
71? Yeah.
My senior year. But another great moment was my sophomore year in '69, Ohio State 24-12 at halftime, and that was the final score. And at that time, they were the number one team in the country. So that really put Michigan on the map. I mean, like, big time, because, nobody thought we were going to beat Ohio State. I mean, they had been undefeated for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And we took it to them. It was 24-12 at half, and that was the final score. And then fast forwarding again, and we went to, that was in Ann Arbor. My junior year, we went to Columbus, and we lost. And then my senior year is when I scored the winning touchdown.
Yeah.
And that's the last time I've been in that stadium, was my junior year in Michigan, because the fans down there are crazy,
Yeah, that's an understatement, Dr. Taylor.
So that 71 game, was that your last game at Michigan then?
Last game in Michigan Stadium, and my last play at Michigan Stadium offensively was the 21-yard touchdown run.
Yeah.
With 2 minutes left, and the Bob Buford call, touchdown, Billy Taylor. That was my greatest individual moment in sports.
Yeah.
And just I still get chills whenever, because certain people send that recording to me periodically, and I get goosebumps, man, because I can go right back to that moment in time. I mean, because think about it, you're a football player in the biggest game on the schedule. I'm a senior. I'm a running back. We're undefeated, and we're playing in the Michigan-Ohio State game at home. And for me to have the honor, I couldn't do it by myself. It was the team, as both say, the team. But I was the ball carrier.
Yeah.
And I scored that touchdown, and I will never, ever forget that moment. It was
what's going through your head? You know, you're told that you're gonna get the ball on that play. What's going through your head? I mean, all the pressure in the world is on you at that point. This is like, it's your senior year. You guys are losing, and you know the ball's coming to you. What is going through your mind? You know, a couple minutes before you know that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, you know, the fact is, and what a lot of people don't know, I really didn't know it was going to happen.
Really?
It was like fate or something, because, you know, we had put in audibles, and the quarterback reading defenses, we would check out of a play and check into another one. And that's the way it was. We had another play called in the huddle. I don't recall what that was, but I know we lined up in a power I formation, and Larry Sippa, you know, looked at the defense, and what I found out later, they were all boxed in tight. They were expecting apparently something inside off tackle, and he checked off, and you know, when he went blue, and then he called the play. I think it was 58 or 59. It was a wide sweep, a pitch. But when he checked off to that play, you know, I'm standing in the I formation, and I was like, "That's me."
Oh,
you know.
Jeez.
So it happened that quick, and we ran it the same way we practiced it 1,000 times or more. And I got the pitch, and a great blocking. You know, Fritz Seifert was at fullback. He threw a great block. Bo Rather, God bless Bo. He's deceased now. He cracked back, and I had blockers downfield. I turned the corner and just turned it on, man. And I couldn't even feel my feet hitting the turf. You know, I saw that real estate in front of me, and all I wanted to do was cross the goal line, and you know, I was blessed to do it. But it happened so quick, and I had no idea when we were in the huddle that play was going to be called.
Right.
And so it was a check off.
Now, really, I guess kind of want to keep it moving, the interview, because of the time constraints and stuff like that for us on our end. But after your time at Michigan, you have a book out that you've written on it. I believe it's called Get Back Up. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, Get Back Up, the Billy Taylor story.
You had a series of just horrible, unfortunate events and stuff, and it kind of caused your life to spiral out of control. You know what I mean? Where you were addicted to alcohol and drugs, and kind of living on the streets of Detroit. What were there lessons from your childhood, your upbringing? Because you said you go to church and stuff like that. Were there lessons from your time on the football field? What helped you and propelled you to dig yourself back out of that and proceed to go on to become a doctor?
Well, I have to, a good question. I have to give God the ultimate glory. I'm a teacher, not a preacher, but I was brought up in church, and, you know, although we were poor growing up, I had a solid foundation. And that's what a lot of young people don't have today. You got, you know, children, teenagers having babies, and they really haven't learned a lot of lessons in life themselves, and now they got a child. So if you don't know yourself, how are you going to teach a child? But that wasn't my situation. My mom raised 7 of us, and I was the youngest. And I might add, I had 3 brothers and 3 sisters. I was the youngest, the biggest, and the handsomest. And my brothers would not agree with that.
The humblest as well, I might add.
Right.
But, respecting your elders, especially your mother, your father, going to church, praying, trying to be helpful to people and kind to everyone and that sort of thing. That's how I was brought up. But I got sidetracked my senior year at Michigan. I had, everything was going for me. 3-time All-American, MVP my senior year at Michigan. And as we talked about that touchdown, beating the Buckeyes, academically I was doing well and looking forward to a successful career in the NFL because I had these goals. I wanted to graduate from Michigan with my degree. I wanted to go into the NFL and make money enough to build my mom a home and take care of her, but she never had to worry about anything, and then have my own successful business. Well, I did graduate, and I did have success in business later, but right after graduation, my life really fell apart. I played in 2 Rose Bowls on January 1st of 1972. 4 days later, my mom died suddenly of a heart attack. And that just pulled life's rug out from under me. I was lost. Being the youngest of 7, I couldn't deal with it. But my older brothers and sisters were old enough to be out and on their own, and they handled it a lot better than me. At that point is when I fell into depression. And a lot of people don't know that, but serious depression. I started to drink and get high and to ease the pain because I just hurt inside all the time. And I knew it wasn't the right thing to do, but that was how I dealt with being so depressed and so brokenhearted. And then I said, hey, Mom wouldn't want me doing this. So I stopped briefly. But my dad passed when I was 5 years old, and my uncle, my mother's brother, was like a father figure. So in June, like 5 months after my mom's death, my uncle shot and killed my aunt and killed himself. And this sent me back into deep depression. So now I'm drinking more and more. And I stopped again. I says, I was not brought up this way. And then in September, the girl that I was dating was brutally stabbed to death.
Yeah.
So January, my mom, uncle, and aunt in June, and the lady I was dating in September. And I just went off the rails, man. And
that's a lot of loss, Dr. Taylor. That's a lot of loss. That's crazy.
Yeah. Just 20 years old, and I guess you could say I was a mama's boy. My mother was everything. I remember my dad, but he passed when I was 5 years old. I just had the memories of a 5-year-old. But I wanted to do all of these things for my mother, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to do that, and it was so depressing. I mean, literally, I cried daily. So and during this period of depression and alcoholism, hanging with the wrong people, made a crazy decision. I still don't remember it much, but I wound up dropping a guy off, going to rip off a bank and give me some money. And that's really about all that I remember. The next thing I know, there were police everywhere, and, I was incarcerated. And, I realized at that point, that was the first time I'd ever been in any kind of trouble. I just was not brought up that way. I was totally off my foundation. And it was at that point that I knew I had to change. I had to get back to my roots. I had to to reestablish myself. But I wound up doing 30 months in prison. And during that time, I got my master's degree. I was in maximum security in Oxford, Wisconsin, and for a year, and getting into fights because people knew of Billy Taylor there, and they wanted me to play, sports, and I wouldn't do it. And there was some name calling, and I had to punch a few people out, so, say in Rome, do as the Romans. I just did what I had to do to survive.
Right.
I wouldn't play flag football with them, and guy called me the B word. And so I went out and I ran the ball, and I ran right into him, knocked him down, and started kicking and pounding him. And I got thrown in the hole. Another time, while work detail, another guy started stuff. So I had to knock him out, and I got thrown in the hole again. And but Bo had flown out with me, Bo and Sam Carpenter, who was kind of like a godfather, and his son, Butch Carpenter, and I were roommates. But Bo had told me to watch my back when I went in there, and, that's what I had to do. But the warden offered me a job as a clerk, up in his office to get me off the compound. And so then I worked towards getting a transfer to Milan, and there I started. Bo helped me get into grad school, and I began and completed my master's degree at Michigan while serving time at Milan. But it was that type of lifestyle was totally foreign to me. I'd never been in trouble in my life, and boy, when I got in trouble, I got in trouble. It was huge, but I look at it now in retrospect, it just helped. It made me the man that I am today in so many ways, but I would not recommend that to people to, wind up going to jail, to grow up and wisen up and everything. But, you never know what life's itinerary is. You just go with it, but I did a lot of praying, I got back on foundation. I do want to make that point. I had a foundation, and that's what I tell young people and older people as well. I contribute my background, my upbringing, and the teachings from my mom and elders in my family and the prayers that they made for me. That's how I was able to turn my life around, because I remembered when I was a kid growing up and what I did and what I did not do. That's what I mean by foundation. Respecting your elders, going to school, getting good grades, going to church, working in the community, being kind to everyone, irregardless of who they were. And during my depression and alcoholism, substance abuse, I got sidetracked, But a lot of young people today do not have that type of foundation, and that's my perception as to why the world is kind of so crazy as it is now, But during that time in prison, I woke up and I worked hard, and I began and completed my master's degree while serving time in Oxford and in Milan, Michigan. And according to Warden Hanbury, I was the first federal inmate to begin and complete a graduate degree at that time, and that was in 1977. But anyway,
yeah. Dr. Taylor, we're not going to keep you too much longer, but I just wanted to kind of put a capstone on this interview. So you've got a book coming out. You've got a podcast coming out, which we'd like to plug here in a minute. But you had the Big Ten Network did a movie on you, or a gentleman did a movie, a documentary on you called Perseverance, and it aired on the Big Ten Network. I don't know if I heard I don't know if I heard incorrectly. Is there going to be an actual movie, like a live action movie with movies with
Yeah, I'm
with
glad
actors?
you asked that.
Yeah.
Yeah, former Michigan player who's an actor and screenwriter in L.A., Brian Letcher. He's in 50s, I assume, I think, but we became friends over the years. But he's a fairly successful actor and writer, and he flew in from L.A. a couple months ago to spend a week with me, and we went down to Barberton and just did a lot of talking. And he's writing a screenplay, and in fact, next week we'll be reading the final draft. And
Nice.
also, him and my entertainment attorney. We're expecting to get this script to some movie makers, some producers, and actually get it on the big screen. Haven't come up with a name for it yet, but a number of people over the years has asked me about that, and then I saw that the interest was there, and if I say so myself, it's going to be a great book, but it'll cover all the things we talked about, and my highs and lows in life, and not just on the football field, but it's a story that I went through some hard times, but I was able to get back up, and it's more important where you're going than where you've been. But we don't have a title yet, but for sure we'll be marketing it to producers out there in Hollywood over the next couple of months. And I do plan to do a podcast. Hopefully in about a month I'll be on the air. I've had my own weekly radio show for 4 years with 910 AM, the Superstation, out of Detroit. But they changed their format and went with ESPN. So my show was called Get Back Up, along with my co-host, with myself, Dr. Billy Taylor, and my co-host was Bishop Gerald Roberts. So we'll keep that team together, and my podcast may be the same name. I don't know, but I've been working with some technical people, and in about a month we'll be launching it. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely, yeah. You just got a great story, and it can't be told enough. So I think that's awesome that there's a book. The documentary is still incredibly interesting and super. I mean, it's timeless. That's super cool. I'm just excited to hear that that there's been a script completed, and that's kind of what you guys are looking to move forward on in putting that into production. So that's really cool. And
thank you.
Yeah, and you've got great stuff to add every week. If you do a podcast, that'd be really, really sweet.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do it. I should be set up actually in the next 1 to 2 weeks, and I have a guy that does podcasts, and he knows the proper equipment, the audio, the video stuff, and I've already prepared what I call the Florida room in back of my house. And it's all arranged and furnished and ready to go.
That's the toughest part is the equipment and getting all the technical stuff, nailed down.
As you see tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the things we talked about, because I'm definitely not a high tech guy. I'm old school. I text and email, and
hey, you kept up with us. You kept up with us, Dr. Taylor.
Yeah.
Well, it was fun. It's great to talk with you guys, and then my old teammate and dear friend, Big Jim Brandstetter, was on your show.
Yeah,
as I understand. So have me back anytime, man. But
absolutely, yeah.
I look forward to it.
maybe if we have you on again, we can talk some current Michigan football if you follow the team fairly closely.
Yeah, I've been hearing about a lot of these. I still call them allegations at this time. Whether everything is true, everything is true or not.
You used to be
no matter what, I'm true blue.
Now, is it correct that you were a compliance officer for UNLV?
Yes, I was athletic compliance officer, academic advisor. Not UNLV, Community College of Southern Nevada.
Okay.
I got my master's from UNLV, and now the community college is simply the College of Southern Nevada. But that was back in the late 90s and up to 2005. And I qualified guys. We just had basketball. We didn't have football. And I remember the great George Tarkanian. His son, George, was the head coach for basketball. And then we had basketball and baseball, not football.